Okay, chapter 2, rolling along. This one is all about traffic control and signs. We'll be talking a lot about this one is actually the largest chapter in your book. If you look through it, it's going to be about traffic lights, a bit about intersections, pavement markings, crosswalks, school zones, all that fun stuff. So this one is quite a long chapter, and you will definitely get a few questions on this chapter for sure. There'll definitely be a few sign questions and some traffic controls or lane controls, things like that. So this is a really good chapter to, if you're going to memorize anything, definitely memorize this chapter for all the different signs and what they mean. Okay, all right, next slide. Okay, what is a traffic control? So a lot of this on the exams or on the test, a lot of it is like their terminology that they use versus the terminology we're used to. What a traffic control is, they are signs or lights that give direction to drivers and road users. They are what tell the drivers what is permitted or not permitted, and when to go and when to stop and when to slow down, things like that. So any traffic control can mean a sign or it can mean traffic lights. Uh-oh, I went too fast, didn't I? Yes, okay. Traffic control signals, they're lights, and they use, I'm sure most of you guys are pretty familiar with traffic lights. If you've ever crossed the street, you know that it goes from green to yellow and to red to control the flow of traffic of intersections and where roadways merge with each other. So these are the basic forms of, like, green means go, obviously, yellow means slow down or prepare to stop, and red means stop, you cannot go. But there's also additional things that we'll go on to, like, what does a green arrow mean? What does a flashing red light mean? So these are the basics of the colors of traffic lights, but they can also get more complicated as they add more things to it. And it's very important to know what they go, or what the traffic light is telling you to do as a driver and what it's telling other drivers to do, because it's not just you on the road, there's other drivers, but there's also other road users. There's also pedestrians and cyclists, and they are all coming from different directions, and they have to follow traffic controls as well. So in order for everyone's safety, that's what the traffic controls are there, and it's really important to know what they do. So I'm gonna show a video. I just need a second for it to load. And hopefully you guys can let me know if you don't hear any volume, but it should work.
Here are some common mistakes when making left turns.
So, can you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this video is just demonstrating what I had talked about, traffic controls. This one talks really specifically about left-hand turns at light-controlled intersections. So this is going to demonstrate some do's and some don'ts, and this will really highlight the importance of why it's important to know those lights. For everybody needs to know those lights, because the number one area where collisions happen are in intersections. Either because people are trying to fly through a yellow, or they're using poor judgment when oncoming traffic comes, things like that, or pedestrians. Even now with spring coming and warmer weather, there's a lot more cyclists on the road from what I've noticed. So you got to pay attention to all those things. Even if you have a green light, it doesn't necessarily mean you can go. You have to look at all the sides of the road, where you're going, and who is already in the road using it, like a pedestrian or a cyclist. So this video is put on from AMA, and it'll demonstrate, like I said, some of the do's and don'ts in order to be safe through intersections and knowing those traffic controls.
Advancing when light is green. Here are some common mistakes when making left turns. Advancing when light is green but not yielding to oncoming traffic will result in a collision if there's an oncoming vehicle. Advancing when light is green but failing to shoulder check for pedestrians at the crosswalk, which results in a situation of failing to yield to pedestrians and oncoming vehicles. Turning too wide as a result of excessive speed may cause a collision. Also, a potential hazard is created by drivers who accelerate towards the intersection to beat a flashing hand signal. At a high speed, the vehicle is unable to turn into the left lane. Instead, it enters into the right lane, forcing the other vehicle to take evasive actions. Turning left at the same time as a right-turning vehicle is turning into the adjacent lane. This situation creates crash potential. A large vehicle waiting to make a left turn from the opposite side may obstruct your view of oncoming vehicles. Taking a risk and turning left while unsure of oncoming traffic may result in a collision. Finally, following another vehicle into the intersection is not permitted. Only one vehicle should advance into the intersection at a time. The correct approach to make a left turn with a dedicated left turn lane is to enter dedicated left turn lane as soon as possible. Observe signals and shoulder check. If the traffic signal shows an arrow indicated turn, proceed when arrow is green. If there's no arrow, advance into the intersection, keeping vehicle wheels straight, yield to oncoming vehicles and pedestrians at crosswalks, and then proceed when safe into the left lane. The correct approach to make a left turn without a dedicated left turn lane is to wait for the green light in the left lane. When light is green, advance into the intersection, keeping vehicle wheels straight, and proceed when oncoming vehicles have cleared the intersection and pedestrians have cleared the crosswalk.
So as you can see, it's not as easy as just green means go, right? There's you really got to pay attention to where you're moving your vehicle, where the other vehicles are. Is there a large truck in your way? Even though you have that green light to go left, you still need to be able to yield to oncoming traffic. So just because it's green doesn't mean you get to go right away. You can only proceed when it's safe to do so and when the intersection is fully clear from all users, including cars and pedestrians. So there's also more complicated, like that just showed you green and yellow, and it was also talking a bit about the hand signal for pedestrians. So those are all indicators. All those traffic controls tell you what you need to do. So say you were in that left turning lane and you had a flashing green light, that means you can go. That means that the other side of traffic, they have a red light so that you have the right of way to go forward. So just to be mindful, it's especially in urban centers like in Edmonton and large cities, you will definitely have a lot more than just green, red, and yellow. You'll likely have crosswalk pedestrian lights, you'll have turning lights or turning only lanes, things like that. So they can definitely get more complex. Any kind of traffic control signal can build up, and there's a lot going on. So you definitely need to know what's what. So on these lane reversal signals is what they're called. So as you can see, you can usually see these. I use the example, if you're familiar with the north side of Edmonton on 97th Street, they usually have these, which shows at the top, they will have X's and arrows. So the X's means if you're facing that X in that lane, like this vehicle here, you are not allowed to drive in that lane. You have to move over to the arrow, because that means that there's traffic coming from the opposite direction in that lane. So the reason they do these, like, why wouldn't you just leave it the same all the time, right? What they do is that this is on really major roadways. They do this to direct traffic when it comes to like rush hour period, when say in the morning on 97th Street, north side, you have a lot of people that commute downtown on regular hours, usually in the morning. there's a lot of people heading towards downtown, so they open up more lanes in that direction. And then after hours, like in the afternoon, around 4 to 6 p.m. when rush hour starts up again, there's a lot of people leaving downtown. So they switch those lanes to allow to give where there's the most traffic, they open up more lanes for them. And that just to help control where the most demand is for road users. So you have to be very mindful of that. I've seen people a lot on that street driving down the wrong lane because yesterday they were using that lane at that time, like say on a weekend they use that lane, but then come Monday they didn't realize that the lanes switch. So you definitely need to be mindful of looking up above on those lane reversal signals, because you gotta pay attention to making sure you're in the right lane. So that signal above, like I said, can change between an X and a green arrow, and it's all from different times to different days of the week. It really depends on the road itself and which direction you're going. So yeah, we're gonna talk, or I'm gonna show you another video. This one's a little longer, but it does give a really good overview of the different classifications of road signs. There's a whole tons of signs, as you see in class 7. It's pretty much all signs, but we break it down into, there's 6 main classifications, and then you can add different things to those classifications. So those 6 classifications each mean something, and this video gives a really good summary of those different classifications and what they mean and why they're used in that certain way.
Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test, talking today about road signs and the major classifications of road signs. The 3 ways that road signs convey information are shape, the colors, and the text or symbols that are on the road signs. These are the 3 ways that road signs convey information to road users. Today we're going to talk to you about the major classifications of road signs, and this will introduce the road sign playlist here on Smart Drive Test. We'll be right back to talk to you about that. Smart Drivers, Rick with Smart Drive Test. Welcome back. Talking to you today about the major classifications of road signs. First and foremost, and the most prominent, are regulatory signs. The root word of regulatory is regulation. Regulation means law, and if it is the law, you must obey that sign. And the major regulatory signs are stop signs, yield signs, railway crossing signs, and speed signs, which are the rectangular signs with a black border, white background, and black text or symbols. These are all regulatory signs and must be obeyed, and drivers must have knowledge of these for the purposes of a road test to be successful, either on a learner's or on an on-road road test. First and foremost, stop signs are octagon, 8-sided, very prominent. They have a white border, they're red backgrounds, and the letters stop written in white on them. If you're on a native reserve, they might be in the language of the native reserve on which you're on. Or if you're in Quebec, they'll be in French, arrête, which means to stop, as you can see here in the image. The next regulatory sign is the yield sign, which is an upside down triangle. It has a wide red border with a triangle, a smaller white triangle in the center. The yield sign indicates to the driver that they must give the right of way onto the road which they're entering, or to any pedestrian traffic, other road users. The next regulatory sign is rectangular in shape with a black border and a white background. Mostly speed signs, but slower traffic move to the right. For those of you traveling less than the traffic flow and are traveling in the hammer lane, it indicates to you, yes you, that you should move over to the right lane, which is considered the slow lane, so other people can pass. The next regulatory sign is the railway crossing. In most provinces in Canada and the United States, they are beginning to standardize this. It is an X with a red border and white background, indicates a railway crossing. If you're driving a larger class vehicle such as a bus, you may have to stop. If you're driving a truck, hauling dangerous goods, you may also have to stop before proceeding across the railway crossing. If you're taking a road test in a manual transmission, no shifting over railway tracks for the purposes of a road test. The next sign, as you can see here, is the school sign. It is a pentagon. Looks like a house with 5 sides. Most of these are going to neon green. They are beginning to standardize these. However, some of them can be blue or they could be green, indicating a school zone. If you're in a school zone in Canada, you have to drive 30 kilometers an hour. If you're working in the States and they have a school zone, it'll be 20 miles per hour. In British Columbia, for example, they don't have a sign indicating the end of the school zone. So when you're driving through the school zone, you have to look for the sign on the other side of the road and see the back of that sign. It's pentagon in shape, and you'll be able to know that you're at the end of the school zone and that you can resume speed after that sign. Do not speed in a school zone if school is in session. That's an automatic fail on a road test. Next most common sign, cautionary or advisory signs. They are usually diamond in shape, however they can be rectangular. They have a yellow background and the writing on them is black, or the symbols are black on the cautionary or advisory sign. One of the most common signs is the hazard obstruction sign, which is rectangular and has the hash marks on it to the left and right. And there's a full video, I'll put a card up here for you, about the hazard obstruction signs that will warn you of hazards and obstructions on the roadway and on which side to pass, or whether you can pass on either the right or the left. Next signs on a roadway, which are the most important, especially now in the summertime: construction season. Usually diamond in shape. They have an orange background with black lettering or symbols on them which tell you of construction zones. Many of these construction zones have reduced road speeds. So take note if there is a reduced road speed, especially if you're on a road test. Again, if you speed through a construction zone, automatic fail. As well, construction signs warn you of workers on the roadway and equipment, so make sure you're on the lookout for roadway workers and construction equipment in and around construction zones. The next one is lane usage. As you can see here, rectangular, black background, white border. The arrows on them indicate which lane you're going to be in and what that lane is going to do, whether it's going to turn left or right. Usually these lane marking signs are overhead of the lane, and they are in conjunction with road marks, so the same arrow that is on the sign will also be painted on the road surface, so have a look. Sometimes the road markers are a little hard to find in the spring because they've been wearing out by snow plowing action and traffic and whatnot. Services signs are rectangular, blue with a white background, and lettering or symbols are white on them, usually indicate hospitals or other services. Hospitals are the most prominent, as you can see here in the image. Action permitted, rectangular in shape with a green circle. Whatever action is permitted, turning to the left, turning to the right, stopping, those types of things will be with an action permitted. Some provinces use those as opposed to the inverse, which is action not permitted, as you can see here, which is the same rectangular sign with a white background, except it has a red circle with a line through it, which tells you that there's no stopping, no parking, whatever action is not permitted in the not permitted sign. You'll be tested about these signs on a learner's test, so make sure you know actions permitted and actions not permitted. The last sign category is the services sign or the destination sign, usually green with white lettering on them. Will tell you how far you are from a destination. For example, if you're in Kitchener, Ontario and traveling to Toronto, it will tell you the distance from where you're at to Toronto and how far it is. So if it's 110 kilometers to Toronto from Kitchener and you're traveling at 120 kilometers an hour, which is the speed limit on the 401, you know that it's going to take you an hour to get there. So it can also give you an ETA, an estimated time of arrival, if you pay attention to these signs and how far you can travel in a set amount of time at a given speed. So destination signs. Services. The other sign here you can see is brown, trapezoidal in shape. In some of the United States, these will give you forestry information in provincial parks and whatnot. Some of these will be written on brown signs. That's the last classification. It's not really a major classification of signs, but just to give you some indication of what this sign is about, will give you information about parks and forestry and those types of things. Those are the major classifications of signs that you will need to know for the purposes of a road test. In conclusion, regulatory signs, the major classifications of signs. The root word of regulatory is regulation. It means the law, you must obey these road signs. You don't obey these road signs on a road test, you're not going to be successful on a road test. So know your regulatory signs, stop signs, yield signs, speed signs, railway crossing signs, and school signs. All regulatory signs. The next one is lane usage signs. As you can see here, it's black, white border. The arrows on it are white as well. Advisory or cautionary signs warn you of hazards and obstructions on the roadway and anything else that you could potentially run into. Reduce speeds and those types of things are all cautionary or advisory signs, usually diamond in shape, can be rectangular, yellow with black lettering or symbols on them. Construction signs, orange with black lettering or symbols. Make sure you pay attention to construction signs, most important on a road test, because oftentimes these construction zones have reduced speeds and you must obey these reduced speeds. As well, in many states and many provinces, the reduced speed, if you're speeding in a construction zone, the fines are doubled. So just keep that in mind if you decide that you're going to go too fast through a construction zone. Finally, destination signs, green with white or lettering or symbols on them. Usually it's lettering, which will tell you how far you are from a town, city, or hamlet, and you can figure out an ETA from the destination sign. Services, usually blue, rectangular in shape, telling you of hospitals and other services in the area. Forestries and parks can be brown with white lettering on them, and that's the last classification. If you like what you see here, share, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section. All of that helps us out. As well, head over to my website, get your road test checklist, and give you information about skills that you need to practice for the purpose.
You don't need that. I got tests for you guys. So he went through a lot of those regulatory signs. So if you go on to page 25 of your driver's guide, those are the 6 main classifications that he talked about. They are the main categories in which actions are prohibited. I call it the Ghostbuster sign, but the red circle with the line through it, that's prohibitive, right? Actions are not permitted or not prohibitive. You might see both terminology on the test, so just be mindful. Sometimes they like to switch between not permitted or prohibited, so they could also switch that up, but they mean the same thing. It means that an action is not allowed. So you'll often see the little U-turn symbol in there saying no U-turns, but it could mean anything. No left-hand turns, no right-hand turns, no parking. There could be a P in there. So these are the main classifications of shapes and colors, but within these, it'll have more detail. Whatever image or letter or arrow is inside that sign will tell you if it's permitted or not permitted, or if you're in a school zone or a lane change. That's what but these are the main 6, like he said. And then there's those additional ones. The brown ones are about like provincial parks, and the green ones are about destinations and details. But these ones, these 6 right here, are the legal requirements that you must follow and are very, very important to know on your knowledge test and just for driving. So the next one is the green circle, which obviously means the action is permitted. So you definitely need to pay attention to these ones so that you know that what your action is doing is the right thing. You are allowed to turn, you are allowed to park here, those things, because they also get enforced. If you are found doing a driver infraction and not following those laws or those posted signs, that's when you get a ticket. You know, when it says no parking, especially downtown, you see a bunch of those no parking at certain hours or during the day in front of businesses. If you are caught parking there even for like 5 minutes, it's happened to me before. They're like Nazis. They come out there, those traffic ticket guys are right on it downtown. Like they will come out and give you that ticket right away. So to avoid some unnecessary fines, it's definitely important to know these, and for your own safety. I mean, oftentimes they put that non-parking for a reason. Usually it could be, sometimes they have no parking in those lanes during rush hour. So you don't want to stop the flow of traffic and obstruct other people, right? It's for your safety and for everybody to use the road in a good way and manage the flow of traffic. So the next one is the regulatory sign. And that's, right now it's just white, but you'll never see just a plain white one. You'll see something in it. Usually those are speed signs on them. That shows you the speed limit within that area. And we'll go into more detail of different speed limits and in what areas. School zone or a school area, that is the yellow, or it could be green sometimes, depends, fluorescent yellow or fluorescent green background with the pentagon shape or like a little house. So those, if you see those, you are entering into a school zone. And be prepared for school zone crossings or children playing. They also use these for playground zones. So you'll see a little more, you'll see some more examples around those school zones, but those will always be a school or children present. The lane use designation, or like you said, lane control, these are always going to be black signs, and it tells you if you're allowed to go straight, if you're allowed to turn, and you always want to pay attention to those signs. They will usually come up quite well in advance. They will be there in the intersection, but they usually come up a little sooner so that drivers can prepare to enter into the lane that they need to well in advance, so you're not, you know, grabbing yourself in there, so that you have enough time if you need to move over into the proper lane for where you're going, you have time to do that, and you can plan that out and make your lane change in a safe manner. And then construction warning signs. These provide information about a construction area. So it's usually not just a simple construction zone. There's usually a lot more to it. It'll say if there's workers present. It'll often say what kind of work is being done, whether it's like rough road ahead, or you know, a lane is getting reduced into one. If there's active moving vehicles all over the place. So all those construction signs are always going to be orange, but within them are going to tell you details of what is going on within that construction area. And it's really important, especially if, like, they say there's loose pavement. There's one that you'll see where it's like solid and then a bunch of rocks. Those are important to know to protect your windshield, right? You wouldn't want to be hidden into that rough road at full speed or anything like that. You might even want to slow down even lower than the speed limit to avoid you know, potentially skidding your vehicle or having any rocks kick up and hit your windshield. That happens a lot here in Alberta. We have a lot of construction, you know, the joke, we have 2 seasons, winter and construction. So you're definitely going to come across construction signs in your times on the road. That's just a reality here in Edmonton and Alberta. We always have a lot of construction during the summer months because we only have a limited summer. We only have a limited number of days that are really good weather to do this type of construction, like concrete pouring and things like that. So they utilize all those construction times as much as they can when we do have the good weather. So does anyone have any questions on signs? I had a lot of, those are just the general rules around them, and then I'm going to go into some more specifics of what each sign looks like and means. I'll look at the chat.
I don't have questions.
Yeah.
I said I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay, good.
Sorry.
Good. That means, I hope that means that I'm doing a decent job, but we'll see on your quiz. Okay, so general, those are really important to know as the basis for all other signs that build on that. So speed limit signs, as we talked, those speed limit signs will be yellow, and it'll tell you in there, it'll say maximum 100 kilometers per hour. And so, and you can see in brackets there, it says, unless otherwise posted. So what I'm going to show you is most times you will have a speed limit sign posted. So pay attention because they can change regularly too, right? You can be in a 60 zone for a while and all of a sudden they drop down to 50 and you're still doing 60. You could definitely get a speeding ticket or, you know, be driving in an unsafe manner. So you need to pay attention because those speed limits can change all the time, and they can change within urban centers or outside of urban centers on primary highways. But the main 3 speed limits that I'm going to show you right here are generally, if there's no sign that you have seen posted, if there's no sign, but you know that you're on these roads, these are what it kind of defaults to. These are the speed limits where it goes to, unless it's otherwise posted, as it says. So the first one is on primary highways. By a default or as a general rule across the province, if you are on a major highway, like outside of an urban center, so it could be Yellowhead, but not within Edmonton limits. Say you're outside of the city on the Yellowhead, it will be 100 kilometers per hour unless otherwise posted. So say you're on QE2 and you're heading towards Calgary, that one is actually the speed limit's 110, but it's posted that way. So unless if you don't see a sign there, you know that primary highways generally, they will all default to 100 unless a sign says otherwise. So even if you can be on a primary highway outside of the city, but because it's a rural area, maybe there could be a lot of wildlife, they can actually drop that down to 80. So you can't always default to 100, but just in case you don't see that sign, just know that generally primary highways outside of urban centers are usually around 100 kilometers an hour, unless the sign says otherwise. So I just want to reiterate that because it likely will be a question on your exam about what is the speed limit on a primary highway outside an urban center. You might need to memorize that default speed limit of 100 kilometers per hour. So another default speed limit is for non-primary highways outside of an urban center. So those ones that are more on the, like could be like dirt roads or those less used roads. They're not like the big divided highways or anything. Those ones that go off to like range roads and things like that, those are usually around 80 kilometers an hour. They're still highways, but they're classified as non-primary highways. And then the default speed limit for roads located in an urban center. So these are for highways, but mainly not highways. They're just roads within urban city limits. Those usually default to 50 kilometers per hour. So say you're driving around and like you're in a new area that you've never been around and you can't really see any speed signs really like right away. If you default to 50 kilometers an hour and you're in that city, that's usually a safe bet because it's usually you're not going too slow and you're not going too fast. So 50 kilometers per hour is the maximum speed and generally used in urban centers, unless it's otherwise posted, right? There's lots of other places like, there's other roads around here like the Wayne Gretzky Drive. I mean, that one ranges from 60 kilometers to 50 in the around residential areas, and then goes up to like 80 when you're going across the bridge. So Capilano Bridge. So just be mindful. It can really depend on exactly where you are. Definitely pay attention to what's posted, but in the instance where you don't see where that sign is, if you default to these general speed limits, then you're usually in a safe bet because these are standardized across the province. Okay, other signs that we have. I'm just gonna go off and start listing different signs that we have. So this one, as you can imagine, this one was lane control, right? And so sometimes they're usually on black background, but sometimes they can look like this too, where they're on a white background with a black arrow. So this just means lane control. And what it means is from that lane, you can either go straight through that lane or you can turn left. So be mindful. Usually when arrows, any kind of arrows you have are directional in letting you know where to go. And those arrows can also be painted on the road as well. But it's really important to look at both. As the guy in the video mentioned, sometimes the ones on the road can be faded or they're covered, like in the winter, there's a lot of snow, you can't see the ones on the pavement. So it's really important to pay attention to what the sign is telling you and if you're in the right lane to make the proper turn. So here's another one about arrows, but with that little block in the center, it means that there's a divider ahead. So those you will usually see on highways. It could be where it's you know, you have oncoming traffic going both ways on a highway, but then you see coming up that it's going to be divided. There's going to be a meridian in between you guys, and it's coming up. So it's important to note those, because usually the speed limits can change in those. They can either go up higher, or you might need to move over a little bit to accommodate for that divider. This one is a one-way sign. So obviously, as it says, one way, traffic is only allowed to go that way. So say you're at an intersection facing this one way and it's pointed over to the right, that means you can't go left, because all the traffic is going to be going against you. You're going to be going against traffic. And that can be a pretty hefty fine. I think it's around like $300 if you're caught on a one-way, and some demerit points. So always pay attention. A lot of those, in Calgary, there's a lot of one-ways. And even here in the city, once in a while, they're not very common, but once in a while you can see these one-ways, especially around White Ave. There's a lot of these one-way streets, so be mindful to make sure that you're turning in the right direction for that one-way and not coming into oncoming traffic. Do not pass, as it says, don't pass. If it's telling you you're not allowed to pass in that area, then don't do it. They're doing that for your safety. The reason why they give you passing and no passing zones is to make sure that drivers can do it safely, so that they have enough visibility and enough space to be able to pass other vehicles in a safe manner. This sign looks like a speed limit sign, right? But it doesn't say maximum 50 there. It actually has an arrow. So what that means is that, say you're going 60, you're in a 60 zone and everything's good. What this sign is telling you is that up ahead of you, the speed limit's going to change. So it's going to reduce down to 50. So prepare for that and start slowing your vehicle down. So there's usually, when you get on the road, there's tons of signs everywhere, but most of them are ahead. They give you enough notice so that you can plan and adjust your driving to the area that you're in. So be mindful. If that comes up on the test, that doesn't mean the maximum is 50 in your area. It means the maximum is 50 up ahead of you, and to prepare for that. So 50 ahead. More signs, as he talked about, the yield sign as an upside down triangle. You will see those yields. And what a yield is you don't have to come to a complete stop. So like stop signs, you have to come up to that stop sign with your vehicle, come to a full stop for a minimum of 3 seconds. So they usually, and that's not like stop, 1, 2, 3, go, or like a rolling stop where your vehicle doesn't totally stop and you're still kind of rolling. Those are called rolling stops. Those are not stops. For a full stop, you have to come up to the intersection or the stop line, and you have to count a full 3 seconds. So like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And then you can proceed through if it's safe, either straight or turning right. But a yield is a little bit different, where that one is kind of more of that slowing down the vehicle. You don't have to come to a full stop at a yield, but you definitely need to decelerate your vehicle. You definitely want to put on the brake a little bit, slow down, and you have to look around. So those yields, you will almost 100% see them at intersections. So as you're approaching a yield, the intent is that you don't have to come to a full stop. So say that you come up to the intersection, everything's clear, there's no pedestrians, you don't see any other vehicles, everything seems good. After you slow down and you check all directions, then you're able to just go straight ahead or turn, whatever it is. But say you're coming up to an intersection and you see that there's a cyclist coming, you would definitely need to slow down, and say he's ready to cross the road, that cyclist, you would be required to come to a full stop, and you're only allowed to go forward through that intersection once it's clear. So that's a bit of the difference of stopping. You have to come to a full complete stop, whereas a yield, you can just slow down a little bit, but you can still only proceed through that intersection when it is clear and safe to do so. This is a do not enter sign. So you will usually see these sometimes on dead ends. It'll say like do not enter, not permitted, or dead end. So Sometimes they put these do not enter at dead ends because there's no point. If you're trying to drive through, you're not going to get through. You're just going to end up nowhere. So also they might have this on like private property. Say there's like a commercial development and they only let their commercial trucks through or something like that. You don't want to be stuck in there. Or buses, like here in the city, Edmonton or other urban centers. You'll often see that do not enter because only the transit buses are allowed in that area. You don't want to be driving around in unrestricted areas or areas where it's not really designated for vehicles. So be mindful of those signs and where they're posted, because you can get fines for being in those areas as well. This one I had mentioned, this is a no U-turn. So you can see it's the not permitted sign or prohibitive sign. And then in there's that U-turn shape. So that's saying at this intersection or on this roadway or in an alleyway, you might see those, you are not allowed to do U-turns in this area. This one's the no parking sign. I kind of talked a little bit about that. You'll often see them in busy areas or in front of businesses. So be mindful, don't get caught parking in a no parking sign, because there's a reason why it's no parking. It could be that it's being reserved for a handicap spot. It could be that it's in a major roadway during rush hour, or it could be that it's only permitted for commercial vehicles, or it could be that they're not letting people park there because it's really close to another intersection and you could be obstructing the view from other drivers. Or it could be like a bike lane. That's a reserved lane for cyclists. So you wouldn't want to park in there because then you're going to obstruct cyclists and they're going to have to go around your vehicle and they're going to have to put themselves in dangerous way of traffic driving by. So definitely really important to know about those no parking signs. Anytime you see a P in there, that means either parking is permitted or not permitted. This one is a no left-hand turns. So you can see the arrow is pointing to the left and it's saying that you are not allowed to turn left here at this sign. Sometimes you'll see this where it'll say no left-hand turns and then underneath it'll have specific hours or times. So from 9 a.m. or no, say from like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., you're not allowed to turn left. But if you're outside of those hours, you're allowed. Again, that's to accommodate for rush hour and busy times during the day. There's also a thing where at the bottom here in Edmonton, you would see ETS or transit on the corner. That means that drivers are not allowed to turn left. However, a bus may be allowed to turn left because that's the way its route is set up. So sometimes the city of Edmonton or another municipality, they can make certain specifications of which vehicles can go left and which ones can't, usually to accommodate for public transit. And then, as I mentioned, the stop sign. That one's the most common. We know a lot about that. And I kind of went into detail about what a stop sign actually means. Stopping, coming to a full stop for 3 seconds, and only going once you're free and able to do so, and if you have the right of way. So on the next chapter, we'll talk more about what is the right of way and who has the right of way. This sign means that there's a curve ahead. So you see how this one's a little different. It's not a lane control like we were talking about where it's saying you can go right-hand turn. It's not saying that. It's because it's on that yellow warning sign, it's actually just warning you that there's a curve in the road. It's not saying you must turn right up here in this lane. It's actually just saying up ahead the road might turn a little bit and to prepare for that, especially in challenging weather conditions. Say it's winter and it's really icy, you might want to slow down before you hit that curb. Or if you're driving at really high speeds and you're beside another vehicle, you guys both might want to slow down and adjust your speed for that curve to make sure that to avoid a collision with each other. So this is different than the lane change control, which is the black background and a rectangle. This one is that diagonal or diamond shape with a yellow background. That's just warning you and helping you, giving you a heads up of what's ahead and to prepare and adjust your driving to whatever condition or upcoming obstruction or challenge might be coming up on the road ahead. So this one does mean single turn right. So this one, usually it's not designating the lane, but it's saying, warning, you know, if you're in this lane, everyone's going to be, you have to turn right. There's no going through. So usually it'll just see this as giving you a heads up, that you're going to be entering into a turning only lane. This one, the windy one, means there's like windy road up ahead, or the road's going to curve a little bit. So again, just like the curve ahead, it's just letting you know that the road ahead, for a while, there's going to be some curves around there. So maybe don't try to speed up and speed through it. You might want to adjust your speed and go down a little bit while you're entering those curves. And it's going to be for a little while. This one means merging traffic. So as you can see, there's like a bigger, thicker arrow, and then like a smaller arrow coming into that. That means merging. And we're going to talk about exactly more details in the next chapter about what merging is and how to do it. But to be mindful that this is the sign for merging. As you can see, it's usually where other vehicles are coming in from a smaller roadway into a larger highway. You'll mostly see these on highways, but you can see it in other roads in urban centers and stuff as well. So just to be mindful, like when you're coming off of or into ramps and off ramps, just be prepared that you're going to be having to do the merging maneuver and integrate yourself into traffic. So again, these are all the warning signs. There can be more. There's a lot more within your book when you go to it. There's probably a few pages, of different warnings. They can also have a speed limit underneath there as well. So there can be a combination of different signs as well. This is on page 33. If you flip there, these are all these warning signs, and they can put them together. So they could say, hey, there's a stop sign up ahead, and there's going to be a curve in the road, and the speed limit's going to drop to 85. So it's sometimes you might just see a single sign on its own, but there's oftentimes that you'll see multiple signs either combined together or, you know, one after the other as you're driving. So there's a lot of information you got to take in from these signs, and you really got to understand what you're doing, what you're intending to do, which route that's why it's really important to plan out your route ahead of time. If you're using like a GPS system or something, it's really helpful to prepare well in advance of you know that you got to be turning or getting over, especially in larger intersections. It just helps bring your stress level down and helps you plan ahead when you know which way you're going, and then you pay attention to all these signs so that you can make all your maneuvers and get to your route safely. Some more signs. This means that there's a divided highway begins. So as I mentioned before, it's similar to that other one, but they added an extra arrow. So that's showing you that you're going from traffic coming both ways, and the driving highway is going to begin. There's also a reverse of that where it can be flipped the other way, where the divider is on the bottom and you're leaving. That means your divided highway is ending. This one means two-way traffic. So as you can see, it's that broken line and arrows in opposite directions. That is showing you that you're going to be going opposite of traffic. So that's really important for you to know as you're planning your routes, and make sure that you can plan out when it's safe to pass. If you're in a no passing zone or not, it's important to know if you're traveling in opposite ways of traffic. Another sign here we got is, you can see there's two lanes at one point, and then that lane on the right-hand side is ending. So that means lane ends or the loss of the right lane. So if you're in that far right lane and you see the sign, you know that your lane's going to end soon. And oftentimes it'll tell you how much time you have. It'll say, 10 kilometers ahead, or 2 kilometers. It tells you how much time you have to move over to the left lane, but it helps you to prepare that the lane's going to end. So it's a little different than merging. It's not quite merging. It's that you're already merged with traffic, but now your lane's going to end, so you might need to merge over to the other lane. But if you pick merge on the test, it wouldn't be correct. You would have to say lane ends or right lane ending or loss of a right lane. Could be any of those ways that they word it on the test. So be mindful, even though the action may be that the result of that is that you have to merge, the correct answer would be the lane ends. Oh, here's that one where I talked about different pavement. So it's saying that the pavement's going to end. So you'll likely see these in, you could see it in construction zones, or you could just see it in rural, most of the time in rural roads. You'll see where everything's paved and everything's nice and good. And then all of a sudden you're going into the unpaved road. Either they haven't done construction there, or they've just left it in a rural area, right? So that's when you're hitting like a dirt road or gravel road. So definitely be mindful of those. You don't want to be going 100 from the paved road and then hit that loose shale, because that'll put you in a dangerous situation of skids. So always be mindful. You definitely want to reduce your speed whenever you hit that. Also, when you go from paved road down, there's usually a bit of a bump there, so you don't want to scrape your vehicle or anything like that. You want to try to get into that changing of the road in a slow way. So yeah, you'll often see those in construction zones where you have to slow down, you go through some gravel, and then you'll end up back on pavement again. But be mindful. It might also tell you how long you have the unpaved road. It'll say, you know, for the next 20 kilometers, it's unpaved. So then you know that you're not going to be doing that slower for too long, but just to get through the gravel, and then you'll be back on pavement again. This one means a narrow passage is what it's called, but oftentimes it's symbolizing that there's a bridge up ahead. So as you can see, it's not a loss of the lane. So it's different from, it's not that you're losing a lane. It's just that you're going from maybe 2 wider roads to 2 skinnier roads. So to be mindful, they could either just have roads that are skinnier, but most of the time, a lot of the times, this is symbolizing that there's a bridge up ahead, so that your roadway is going to be a little bit narrow. So definitely, again, adjust to that. Oftentimes you would want to slow down as you enter into that narrow passageway. Just make sure you have good control of your vehicle and you're spaced nice and center in the middle, especially if there's another vehicle coming and you guys are both having to squeeze through that narrow passageway. The best thing to do is just slow down to where you're comfortable so that you guys can safely pass each other through that narrow passageway. And then it's showing you that it's going to open back up again. But it could say narrow and then stay narrow. You could just be losing like where you used to have a nice wide divided highway, and then now you're going on to a skinnier highway. That could be a possibility as well. But most times it's usually symbolizing a bridge. Bump ahead, so that's just showing you that there could either be speed bumps or it could just be a really bumpy road up ahead. I've seen those too, where it'll say bumpy road and it'll ask you to reduce your speed down to like 60 or something like that. And those are really important also for commercial trucks, ones that have maybe a trailer on the back. If they're coming into some rough bumpy roads, they definitely want to slow down to make sure that they're not disrupting their cargo or potentially bouncing around the trailer or potentially causing damage to their vehicle. So those are really important also for yourself. I mean, if you have a really low vehicle and you're heading into some bumps, you definitely want to slow down because you don't want to, you know, potentially cause any damage to your vehicle. And then this one, it does have a stop sign, but again, with that arrow on top, it's telling you that there's a stop sign coming up ahead. So to prepare for that, you would want to just make sure that you're going to be stopping. And you'll often see these again on highways, less likely in the urban centers because you're usually traveling slower. But when you're doing 100 on a highway, and you have a stop sign coming up, you need a lot of room to stop. So you need quite a little bit to slow your vehicle down and come to a full stop. You can't just slam on the brakes and stop on a dime. It doesn't work that way. So that's why they add these warning signals up ahead so that you can slow down and prepare to stop. Or it could be that the stop sign is maybe hidden behind a tree or like over a hill. You can't quite see it. So again, these signs are really important to give you information up ahead well in advance so that you can prepare to do your maneuvers safely. Okay, more signs. We're getting through them though, trust me. This might be a little bit funner than learning them all on your own, but This one, we're going into those construction signs, remember? So this one means it's construction because it's orange. You know for sure you're getting into a construction zone, but it's also telling you that the road is closed ahead. So you'll often see this when they're doing road construction. So now you know, oh shoot, I can't go through there. You know, you had GPS, Google told you that you could go through that road, but that sign's telling you that right now, today it's closed. So now, sometimes Google isn't very up to date with all the construction and which roads are open or not. So you can't always just rely on Google. You got to also pay attention to what the road's telling you and what the signs are saying. So they will often have these, you know, on temporary signs or posted up on those wooden blocks and things like that. So these are, you know, you could have been there yesterday and you're like, what, this road wasn't closed yesterday, but today it is, because the construction workers are working on it now. So just be mindful, you ain't going through that road. You're going to have to either find an alternate route or turn back around and try again another day. This one means, this again is construction, and it means that there's a flag person present. So what it's telling you is, hey, there's a flag person up ahead, and that flag person is going to tell you what you need to do. So the flag person, they can either have flags, but oftentimes they will have signs themselves, and they're switching. They're controlling traffic from both ways. So say you're in a construction zone where there's only one lane that vehicles can go down, but there's vehicles coming from both directions that need to use that one lane. That's when you'll have a flag person oftentimes putting a stop sign up there, so everyone needs to wait while the other traffic comes through, and then they'll switch it and tell you that you can proceed ahead, or they can just say, have signs that say slow down or reduce speed. They can have signs that say yield to oncoming traffic, or they could have a flag stopping traffic completely because there's a big truck, a hauling truck bringing in materials or trying to leave the construction site. So you need to be mindful that one, A, there's a flag person, but B, there's also, you need to pay attention to what that flag person's telling you while you're in that zone. Another one is people working. So that one's really key because they're really big on construction safety, right? Like when there's construction workers out there, especially on busy highways like Anthony Henday and things like that, there's cars are going by at really, really high speeds. So they show you that people are working or that workers are present in order for their safety. You wouldn't ever want to be in a situation where you were flying through an intersection, you didn't pay attention, or you were flying through the roadway in a construction zone, and God forbid you were to hit somebody. That would be devastating. So that's oftentimes, pay attention to whether people are actively working there or if it's a construction site that's kind of closed at the time, things like that. But no matter what, you need to follow those speed limits. But they just they help you be mindful and look ahead to make sure that you don't have people potentially, you know, driving right side by side at really high speeds and things like that. And as the guy in the video also mentioned, speed fines within construction zone, those double. So say the speeding fine in an area was like $250. If you're caught speeding within a construction zone, even if it's 10 or 11 kilometers over that posted speed sign in that construction zone, that $250 ticket is now becoming a $500 ticket. So they take those really seriously, and that's for everybody's safety, right? In construction zones. So really be mindful of just slow down in those construction zones and make sure that you know that what's around you and what's going on in that construction zone and for how long. Here's another one, a survey crew ahead. So maybe there's not some active construction going on the road. Maybe the road's fine and everything's going good, but this sign is showing you that there could be surveyors really close to the road taking measurements and things like that, and they're not necessarily paying attention to all the cars going by. They could be distracted trying to do their work as a surveyor. So that's where you need to be a responsible driver and make sure that you're paying attention to everybody and all the active work that's going on the road. Okay, we're almost through school signs a little bit. School crosswalk, that's what you'll see. Remember the school zones. This one's yellow, but again, most of the time in Alberta, they're going to be really fluorescent. Green is mostly. Sometimes blue, but I think that's in the past. It's more so definitely school zones are either yellow or green. And that one's telling you that there's a crosswalk. You see those teachers or whoever it is crossing, that means you're entering a crosswalk zone. This one's also saying, right on there, it says there's a school zone ahead and that the speed limit is going to go to 30 kilometers per hour. School speed limit 30 kilometers. So that's actually the same sign almost, except it also has some additional times and hours. So those are both saying the same thing. You're going into a school zone and it's going to go to 30 kilometers an hour. But this one also says of what hours that the speed limit is in effect, from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So you need to be mindful of different hours of the day that those speed limits could apply. Here's that other one, school zone. This one's blue, but like I said, most of the time it's going to be green. Another one is a school bus stop ahead. So be mindful, especially if it's in that morning time hour or after school hour, be mindful that there could be a bunch of school buses stopping and there could be a lot of kids crossing that walk. So you definitely want to slow down or stop completely ahead as you enter up to school bus. Okay, school areas. Again, you may very likely be asked a question on your test about school zones and school areas. So when you see the sign, you must be cautious that children may be walking along the crosswing or even a highway in rural areas. You often have children, like schools could be right located on a highway. So really got to pay attention to when you're in those school area zones and which speed limit you need to go through. Most of the time, it's going to be 30 kilometers an hour unless they tell you otherwise. But yeah, when you're driving through these areas, you have to be extra cautious. And you also are not allowed to pass in school area zones because say you and two vehicles are driving alongside each other and one of them stops suddenly and you keep going, he could have stopped for a kid that was running out, right? So, or he could be going generally slow and you don't want to zoom past somebody in a school zone because they could be going slower because they see something that you don't. Or they're preparing to stop at a crosswalk coming up because they see a group of kids coming and you don't see those group of kids through his vehicle. Or say you're beside a big truck, right? So you definitely got to be safe and careful with those. So all the stuff on school zones starts on page 30 and it shows you the times. So it says school zone areas and then it lists those times that are in Alberta. So have a look at those and maybe memorize them. As there could be, they could ask you what time of day are school zones in effect. So when you pass this sign, that means that, and there's a speed sign attached to it, as I mentioned, that means you're in a school zone and you must stay in 30 kilometers per hour, less than 30 kilometers per hour, and even be prepared to stop in a school zone. You could be stopping suddenly. That's why we keep it at 30 to make sure that it's safe in case, you know, other pedestrians or children are around. Speed. So the speed for both urban and rural school zones is always going to be 30 kilometers an hour unless they post otherwise. They could reduce it more, but the maximum you're going to go through a school zone ever is 30 kilometers. And it could tell you the times of school zones. So here are generally these are the times, like morning, lunch, afternoon. But on this sign here, it shows you that it's their whole school zone, their school times are 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. That 17 is in like army time. That actually means 5 p.m. So just be mindful, different areas or different towns can have different hours in school zones as well. And then playground zones. They are very similar to school zones. However, you can be in, they're similar in that it's maximum 30 kilometers per hour and there's usually children present, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a school. So these playground zones, you'll usually see them around like baseball diamonds, around recreational centers, things like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean the exact same thing as a school zone. You can have playground zones where there's children actively playing in the area. So that's same thing, maximum 30. And playground restrictions are in effect every single day. So this isn't just Monday to Friday. Playground zones are every single day, including the weekends. So, and that's because, you know, children are using those areas, those recreational areas and those parks, they're using them on the weekend. So be mindful, those school zones also, or those playground zones will always be 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. generally, or 1 hour after sunset. The sign may say otherwise for times, but as a default, these are usually the time that the playground zone restrictions are in effect. Have to stay within that speed limit. And again, same as school zones, you can't pass another vehicle in a playground zone. So even if somebody's, you know, trucking along at like 25 or barely doing 20 and you gotta get impatient, you're late for work and you're like, oh, hurry up. You can't go and zoom around them and pass them. You gotta just wait patiently because those playground zones and school zones will end soon. So you gotta make sure that you get through them safely and then you can resume up to your regular speed limit. So yeah, not permitted to pass or attempt to pass other vehicles. That's a really important one. Okay, on to lane markings. So we talked a lot about all the different signs and different things that they mean. So now I'm going to talk about what the pavement markings, things that you're going to see on the road. So this image is what you'll see while you're driving on the road. You'll always see some lines painted on the road. So a yellow line means that vehicles are traveling in the opposite direction. So definitely be mindful that you're not all traveling together. You have oncoming traffic coming your way when there's a yellow line between you guys. White lines, on the other hand, those mean that vehicles are traveling in the same direction. So be mindful, yellow, opposite, white, same direction. And then these lane markings, whether they're yellow or white, they can either be solid or they can be broken lines, is what they're called. So the solid line means that crossing over that solid line to pass or do a lane change is not permitted. If it's solid, you cannot cross that thing. So think of it as like an imaginary barrier. If it's solid, you can't be passing that line. But if you see how the lane changes and it moves into a broken line, that means that lane changing is permitted. You can go and pass another vehicle if it's safe to do so. If there's nobody in that other lane and you want to switch over because you're going to be preparing to turn, then you can do that only when it's at that broken line. Broken lines on one side means that there's lane changing permitted on the side you're on with the broken line, but there could be a solid line on the other side. So in this instance, it's yellow, so you have traffic moving in opposite directions, and the side on the top, they can do some lane changing. They could pass a slower vehicle if they wanted to, if it was safe, because they have a broken line. But the vehicles traveling at the bottom lane there, they're on a solid line, so they're not permitted to do any lane changing. So definitely be mindful. You can have solid lines together, broken lines together. It's all telling you something that you're allowed to do. So sometimes you might even see a solid double line. So that solid double line means like you are not allowed to, nobody's passing that lane at all, except drivers may only cross that line if they're going to turn left into, like, say he's pulling into a house or something like that, or an alleyway, this vehicle. That's the only time he's allowed to cross that single line, is when you're turning, doing a left-hand turn. So he can't just start lane changing over to pass other vehicles because he's impatient. But if he needs to get off of the roadway and do a left-hand turn, that's the only time you're permitted to cross over solid lines. And only when safe to do so. So that brings us to page 38 of your book. Those are where it summarizes all those different lines: broken, solid, yellow, white. Make sure you know what those mean, because they very well could ask you a question on that. Okay, now you might see arrows on a road. So those arrows, as you can imagine, they're telling you what you can do while you're in that lane. So if you can look at those arrows there, one is pointing towards like an alley roadway, and then one is telling you that you can turn here either before the intersection, or if you're going to turn in that intersection, you could probably use that lane. So there'll also be signs telling you what they can do. And in the middle here, you can see how there's arrows pointing in different directions, right? So that's called a shared use lane. That means that traffic from both directions, either direction, could be using that lane to turn left. So those ones you got to be very, very cautious to make sure that you're not entering that lane too early, because there could be somebody else trying to use that lane to go left in the opposite direction, and you don't want to get into a situation where you guys are both trying to cross at the same time or potentially crash into each other. So definitely be mindful of that you're entering or using that lane in a proper way, and that you're not entering it too early to obstruct other vehicles. We're almost there, trust me. Diamond markings. So these ones, you'll see that white diamond painted on the gray. You will see those on designated lanes, but it'll also be accompanying usually a sign like this one. It's got the diamond on the top with the black, which is telling you black means lane usage, right? Or lane designation. So this is telling you in this lane, usually it's the far right lane in most cases. This far right lane is designated for specific vehicles and at specific times. So this sign, as you can read, it has a picture of a bus and a taxi. It's a little grainy, but it does say taxi. And what it's telling you is that between these hours of 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 and 6 p.m., that's what it means in that army time, and Monday to Friday, if it's any time in those days and times, then buses and taxis are only permitted to use this lane. So again, if you are caught driving in that lane because on Sunday you used it and everything was fine, but now it's Monday morning, you're heading to work and you use that shared road use lane, you could definitely be caught for a fine in traffic. And again, you will see these on 97th Street. Along 97th Street by Yellowhead, they do have designated bus lanes, and that's to help the flow of traffic. There's a lot of buses that travel down that road, so they want to designate those for those commuters that are using those lanes. Sometimes you'll see a carpool too, like in that, but they're not as common. It's usually got to be a taxi in order to use those lanes, or a bus. X markings. X markings on a road, they indicate that you're coming and approaching to a railway crossing. So you'll see, you can also not stop in that X line. So where it has an X, it's telling you there's a railway crossing, but it's also telling you you can't stop in this X. And that's to allow yourself enough time away, like give you enough space away from that railway track so that you're not getting too close to put yourself in harm's way. And those are on page 40 of those crossing, those X markings. Okay. Another one is crosswalks. We talked a little bit about crosswalks, but here's what they actually look like. Crosswalk lines are marked, and they are for pedestrians to use. So all intersections have crosswalks, even if it's not painted. So even if you're at an intersection and there's no lines, it doesn't mean that there's not a crosswalk. There could be invisible crosswalks where they can go corner to corner. But most of the time you'll see either these lines where it's designated for pedestrians to cross into, or those vertical lines all painted together. Those are all meaning the same thing, a crosswalk. So stop lines show where the vehicles must stop at an intersection or railway crossing. So right there on the bottom image there, it says stop line. So it's telling you, you got to stop at that line. You can't go farther into it because you're going to be in the crosswalk zone and you're going to be obstructing pedestrians and potentially forcing them to walk, you know, in the way of oncoming traffic, putting them in danger. So be careful. On the other image, there's a crosswalk line, but there's no stop line. You still are required to stop before that crosswalk intersection. Even if there's no stop line, you need to prepare your vehicle to stop before you enter that crosswalk. You're not allowed to be just parked or stopped in crosswalks. You definitely don't want to be obstructing pedestrians. So there's also no stopping zones. These are also marked with an X, but it's like an X with a closed box around it. So this one doesn't necessarily mean that there's a railway crossing, but what it means is there's no stopping in that zone. So you'll often see these posted in bigger intersections where you're coming from like a more busy road, and that's usually to allow for bigger trucks. When trucks do turns, especially if they have trailers behind them, they're not able to swing their whole vehicle around very easily, so they often put these no stopping zones to give those trucks bigger, like enough room to make their turns safely, and so you're not obstructing that vehicle from getting through. So always be mindful about those pavement markings on the road, because they can mean like your own safety for your vehicle, and it can help you with other road users, right? Always be mindful of what you're doing and also what other people that are using the road are doing. If you can't see that road marking, again, look for a sign. There's usually a sign telling you. It could say, you know, trucks frequently turning, or it could say no stopping zone, or slowing down, or entering into a crosswalk zone, things like that. So if you can't see the road markings, also pay attention. There's usually signs posting what's going on in that intersection or in that area as well. Okay. Sorry I talked for a long time, but we're almost at lunch, and I'm ready to give you guys your chapter 2 quiz.
You're amazing. You're amazing. Very, very time efficient. You know, I've been listening all the time, you know, and you're amazing. You know, thank you very much, Nicole.
Oh, thank you for some feedback. Now I know I'm not just talking into the abyss.
It's so hard. I know. I just don't want to interrupt and say it all the time. So you are amazing. You know, very time efficient. That's beautiful.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.